We're too tiny to fulfill our independent delusions. We have to depend either on Krishna's illusory energy or we depend on Krishna's spiritual energy. But depend we must. Now just try to think how we are acting in this world. We are acting like we don't have to answer to any higher reality. Because, do you see any higher reality? No, I don't see any higher reality. It's just each person for himself. Each of the tiny parts of the Supreme just thinks he or she is on his or her own. That's it. We don't try to understand the master plan. Oh, that's just subjective. Everyone's got their own vision of what the master plan is. Don't bother me with that. But when it comes time for subjective plans for material enjoyment, oh, yeah, well, that's fine. Yes, yes. So we reject one kind of subjectivity and we accept another kind of subjectivity. Don't try to put any spiritual trips on me. That's just your subjectivity. But if I say, hey, tonight we're going to have a class about, number one, how to make more money than you ever dreamed of so easily. And number two, secrets of sensual stimulation. Oh, we wouldn't be able to fit all the people here. Do you think any of them would come here and protest? No, no, we don't want to learn that stuff. It's just your subjective presentation. No, they never say that. They say, oh, it's about time this place got relevant. Yes, how to make more money than you ever could dream of. So easily. And secrets of sensual stimulation. Lost secrets of sensual stimulation from the Kama Sutra. Yes, yes. This is what we need. So just see the bias. One kind of information you reject is being subjective. Another kind of information you're wide open to. Just see how we've been bewildered. Now let's go back to this unborn and born. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna very openly explains some transcendental informations. Krishna explains that about himself. Now, if you start explaining about yourself, and I just say, well, I don't believe that, you would consider me quite rude. You say, hey, look, I'm telling about myself. Now, I just can't accept what you say about yourself. Now, what would give you a reason to reject what a person says about himself or herself? What would give you a reason to do that? If you just immediately just dismiss it, not, sorry. If I ask you, what do? You say, I'm a student at the University of Auckland. I accept that. How would you feel? You have any students here? Raise your hands. Yes. Okay, what are you studying?
Massage.
Huh?
Massage.
I don't believe it. Bunch of junk. Mythology. Massage is mythology. It's just your subjective trip, you know? How would you feel? Yeah, I was like, look, hey, you know, I know who I am, at least materially speaking, externally speaking, and I'm studying massage, and how can you just reject what I'm saying? I mean, are you, what's you're on some kind of trip? This is rude, insensitive. So in Bhagavad Gita, you have Krishna explaining about himself. Now, why is it that we may just consciously or unconsciously reject it all? Nah. Sometimes you may wonder why we present Bhagavad Gita here, and the book is entitled Bhagavad Gita as it is. Because we're just allowing Krishna to speak about himself, and we're just not interpreting it. We're just taking it straight on. That's personalism. I've been looking at few versions, quite a few versions of other attempts at Bhagavad Gita, because Bhagavad Gita is becoming recognized as the prime yoga text. It's always been famous throughout the world, but now the Hatha yogis are starting to get onto it. And so there's so many attempts at Bhagavad Gita in the marketplace. And I look at so many of them, and so many of them start out in their introduction by saying, the first thing you have to understand about Bhagavad Gita is that there's no such person as Krishna or Arjuna. How would you feel? He starts explaining he's studying massage, and he may say he lives in the North Shore or Green Lane or where? St. Luke's. And he starts explaining all about himself. And I say, look, ladies and gentlemen, the first thing we need to understand when listening to him is that he doesn't exist. It's tragic. All right, so what does Krishna explain about himself? He says, number one, I can go from Sanskrit to English, it's a bit easier on me. Ajopi san, although I am unborn. Ajopi san avyatma, although my transcendental, in other words, non-material body is inexhaustible. It doesn't diminish. It doesn't undergo any material change because it's not material. Bhutanam Ishvarupisa. Although I am the chief of all sentient beings, all living entities. And I still come to this world. Even though I'm unborn. Three things. Number one. Number two, my transcendental body is inexhaustible, indefatigable. And number three, I'm the chief of all sentient living entities. They're all my parts. Nevertheless, I still appear in this world. And how is it that I appear in this world? Not by ordinary birth or biological process. Like you appeared in this world, at least in this human form of life that you have now. You popped out of your mother's womb, you were blue and couldn't breathe, and the doctors quickly made you cry so you would start breathing. It was such a traumatic experience you can't remember. But Krishna doesn't appear that way in this world. He doesn't appear through the biological process of seminal injection and the egg being fertilized. No. He comes his own way, through his own conduit. In Sanskrit, Sambhavami Atmamaya. Atmamaya means my own way. The way of the pure self. That's how I appear in this world. So we have no experience of someone appearing in this world in a non-material way. But Krishna's describing that about his entry into this world. He's describing that there's not the slightest for Krishna to appear in his original form and personality in this world. It's not a problem for Krishna because he's already present everywhere. So then your next question is, well, he's present everywhere. How come we don't see him? Seeing is believing. That's real science. When you see something with your eyes. But you're accepting already some. How many of you see the quantum realities? How many see that? No, you don't see that. But so much of the technology that's available now is based on science that you'll never see. You say, well, I don't see it, but at least the experts know it's there. So similarly, you may not with your ordinary eyes detect the presence of Krishna, but the experts can see. And Krishna invites you in Bhagavad Gita to become an expert. So if Krishna is everywhere, why is it that we don't see Krishna? It's because our eyes are clouded. Our eyes are not trained. So the yoga texts offer a systematic program for seeing Krishna, who's already everywhere. Just like now, you may say, I don't see the sun, but just because you don't see the sun, does that mean the sun's not there? No, it's above the clouds. And certainly persons in other parts of the world are seeing the sun. If you go above the clouds, you'll see the sun. Or if you fly in an airplane, going west, you'll always be with the sun. It's all a matter of your positioning yourself. So the whole process of yoga is to purify your vision so that you'll see that indeed Krishna is already here. It just happens that we are celebrating today Krishna's so-called birthday festival because periodically Krishna comes and allows everyone to see his presence. I say, everyone? Are you trying to tell me that the Supreme Absolute Truth periodically comes and everyone can see, whether they're expert or not? Yes. But here's the catch. Unless you have knowledge of Krishna, you won't understand what you're looking at, even though Krishna's right before your eyes. How many of you have studied biology at the university? Raise your hand. All right. Okay. Josh raised his hand. Now, Josh, before you received some biological enlightenment, when you went into the lab and looked into a microscope, could you make sense of what you saw?
Not at all.
Not at all. You had to have a teacher explain what was right before your eyes. So similarly, Krishna appears in this world, but even though everyone's actually seeing him, they don't understand what they're seeing unless they're educated. In other words, seeing is not the main thing. The main thing is knowledge. Because even if something is right before your eyes, if you don't know what you're looking at, you don't see it. But you can't figure out what it is. So therefore, Krishna explains himself in Bhagavad Gita. I do come. Now you might say, why should the Supreme Absolute Truth want to come here? Why not? Or are we saying that this is our world? Krishna's just stay out. Leave us to it. We'll sort ourselves out. Like the fly saying, just leave me to the honey. You may think that I'm making a mess and getting entangled and I'm acting against my self-interest, but all I know is this honey tastes good. Right? How many of you can remember thinking or saying something like that? Raise your hands. Come on, let's be honest. Thank you. Just like those young boys clutching their surfboards in New York City, and the policeman is saying, guys, it's not a good time for surfing, you know. A huge hurricane is about to hit like it never before. But those guys, they're just looking at the waves. Wow. We can't miss that opportunity. In other words, the sight of those huge waves is so blowing their mind that they can't hear any warnings. They just see the immediate sensory experience that's available to them. One huge wave after another. Meanwhile, there's this policeman, just being a drag on the whole situation. Doesn't he understand? Look, it's right out there. The pleasure is right at hand. Who could resist? That's how, unfortunately, we make a lot of decisions. So, Krishna's birthday is not really a birthday. And your birthday is not really a birthday. You share those qualities with Krishna of being unborn. But we've forgotten all that. Like we saw in the drama. The fish wants to enjoy on the land and forgets that its natural habitat is the water. So the fish goes on